This is the OFN Today on the Our Football Network as we talk Detroit Lions football with Jeff Risdon. He's the managing editor for the Lions Wire at USA Today and co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast. You can find that on YouTube. Jeff, good to talk to you as always.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's good to be with you.
It's always good to have you, Jeff. And Jeff can be reached on Twitter at Jeff Risdon. Jeff, you're a busy man. Not only do you cover Detroit, you still cover the Browns, right?
I do. Yes, I wear a lot of hats.
How's that going?
Well, I actually do, in fact, change hats, not just metaphorically. So I'm have the right mindset for doing it. So it keeps it fun. It's be nice if I covered a winner, Greg. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's kind of missing. Yeah, those two franchises. Wow.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, I was doing the show yesterday with Mark Lawrence. We were doing our season preview, and I was asking him for and we were going over like maybe the top trends for week 1 in the NFL, and I spotted one that he emailed a few days ago, which was Cleveland is 119-1 in opening games, and it's just coincidentally or not, it's coincided with them returning to Cleveland. 119-1, but but very interesting. They've only played Baltimore once on opening day during that time stretch, and they beat Baltimore. It's the only win.
Right. That's right.
So you can look at it positive, negative. I guess we'll find out a week from Sunday.
Yeah, rookie coach and a lot of changes there. I wouldn't bank on the Browns winning that one.
Probably not. But it is week 1.
It is. You
it's
never
not
know.
really a road game, if you know.
Yeah,
you think about it. So
a lot of variables this year make it tough to forecast wins and losses this early.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, even worse in college. I mean, I haven't even done. I mean, I got so much college football in my head at this point in time, getting ready for the season to kick off, and I've got like 1% now because I don't know what to trust. I don't know if anything's going to start. I don't want to put all of the time that I have in my busy schedule to do something in college. Like, let's say if I spent 7 hours in 2 weeks researching the Big Ten, well, that was a waste of time for maybe a few extra months. So let's hope they come back, but you get the point.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's Big Ten country, up where you are, the Detroit Lions, and a franchise that they've got to get to the postseason at some point, especially if they want to save the jobs of their GM and head coach. We talked about this around the draft. Do you still think that if the Lions have a successful season, let's say they're 9-7, but don't make the postseason, and it's a nice season, not an ugly 9-7, but it's a nice season. Everybody's pumped for the future. Is that okay? Is everybody coming back?
You know what? I do think that will be okay. And that's changed some. I think some of it has to do with the unusual circumstances that are surrounding the season. I think some of it is due to the fact that Matt Patricia has shown himself to be a different Matt Patricia. And it's something, there's also been an ownership change in there. Martha Ford bequeathed the franchise to her daughter, Sheila Ford Hamp. It's staying within the family, but it is a different dynamic. Everything we've heard out of Hamp and the new structure that's around her is that they are very pro Matt Patricia and what he's done. He has stepped up on the social justice front, which is a very big issue for them that they support very strongly. He has, I don't want to say softened himself. I think he's just allowed himself to be more of who Matt Patricia really is rather than trying to put on a front. Okay. And it's being very well received by the players, by management, and by those of us in the media who cover them on a day-to-day basis too. This Matt Patricia is a lot different than the guy who walked through the doors 2 years ago. And we're rooting for him. I don't think there's anybody in the Detroit media now who would say, you know, what we want Matt Patricia gone. He has to coach better. That's for darn sure. But there's hope that, you know, like a 9-7, even an 8-8 season where another victory gets robbed against the Packers by bad officiating, which happens every year to Detroit. I think that would probably be enough to keep them.
Well, and we talked about this as well when we did some NFC North talk a few weeks ago, and I'm still believing that. I just have a good feeling about Detroit this season. And it's not because, you know, everybody's kind of looking for that hey, can Detroit be the last to first team? It has nothing to do with that. But I do think they have a chance to win the division. I think it's wide open. I think Green Bay is definitely coming back to the pack. I think the Bears are going to be better, especially if Foles plays. And I think Minnesota's going to be better than people think. I don't even know. I can't believe I have to say that, but if you just look at the Super Bowl odds, they're not very good for Minnesota, which is kind of surprising. So I think it's going to be a very competitive division. But I also think Detroit has a real good chance to make the postseason. I just do. And look, they haven't won a postseason game since 1991. So yeah,
Yep.
last win in 91. They've lost 9 straight playoff games. Last year though, they started 2-0-1 and everything looked good. They had that Green Bay game on national TV, which was kind of the beginning of the bad, which would turn into a 3-10-1
Ooh,
uh, um,
finish. Yeah.
finish.
Yeah.
And yet there were a lot of close games with some bad quarterbacks. So I still think there's a lot of promise if we go back to what happened at the beginning of the season last year. We just got to keep Matthew Stafford healthy.
Yes, that's the key. He played 8 games. They did go 3-4-1 in those games, but again, one of those losses was to the Packers in a game that was stolen from them on national television.
Yes.
I have no problem saying that. I'm not even being a homer on that. I
Oh
think most
no.
Packer fans will tell you that yeah, they might have gotten away with 1 or 2 there. They lost to the Chiefs on a 99-yard fumble
Oh
return.
yeah.
They did not. They were the only team last year to keep Patrick Mahomes from engineering a touchdown. He did not throw a touchdown pass or run for a touchdown in that game.
That's right.
But they won when Kerryon Johnson fumbled at the 1. Everybody on the field for the Lions actually stopped because one of the officials blew a whistle on the side, but it didn't get picked up on the audio. They were insistent about that, but they also blew some chances in that game. So I'm not going to say that they
Sure.
deserve to win that one.
But still,
Um,
that was a game that, if you look back at it, they could have and
they
should have beat the
they
Packers, and
were
they could
they
have and
were
should have beat the Chiefs.
man, they were toe to toe right there with them. They played very well against Dallas later on in the season. They played well against good teams, but they just didn't have enough for whatever reason to come over it. Some of it was coaching. They punted from inside the opposing 40 4 times last year. That's ridiculous. That has to stop. That happened twice in the Kansas City game. That's a big reason why they lost. That's a bigger reason the fumble return why they lost. So they can play better. They were close last year. They led in 13 games. They had the fourth quarter lead in every game through week 12. They and the
Wow.
Chiefs were the only teams that could say that, and they won 3 of them. The Chiefs, I believe, won 10 of them. That's
Well, they
that's the
had
difference.
Mahomes, and
Yeah,
Detroit had who? Who was the
had
quarterbacks?
had Jeff Driscoll, who was one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen, and he
Uh
was
huh.
followed by David Blau, who um, you know what? I'm not going to dog David Blau because I thought he did okay based on what he offered. They picked him up off the
Oh
Browns
yeah. I
for
mean,
some draft pick.
yeah, he had no right being out there.
No, he wound up being. He showed that he can be a long-term developmental project, and he's still around. I think he will continue to be around. But yeah, it was rough. There were so many injuries. Kerryon Johnson was out for a long time. The entire starting defensive line, and interesting that they're all gone now, of Ashawn Robinson, Mike Daniels, and Damon Harrison that was projected together played exactly 11 snaps together last year. 1 or 2 or all 3 of them were out for almost every game. So there's been big changes as a result of it. Hopefully they can stay healthy. They were just so ravaged by injuries last year. Again, that's not the only reason why they went 3-12 and 1, but
Sure.
it was a big factor in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, that happens especially nowadays in the NFL when you have those. There's usually about 10 teams in the NFL that are all like vying in that middle space,
Right.
and injuries and getting robbed by the refs or turnovers at the wrong time. That's what's going to determine whether or not you have a good year or a bad year. And Detroit had all the bad stuff happen, whether it was bad calls, bad turnovers at the wrong time, and injuries. So if all of that changes this year, then I think this is a playoff team. They just have to make sure that they are lucky this year and not
You know,
unlucky.
they absolutely have the potential to do it. And like you said with the division, it wouldn't surprise me if every team in this division wins between 7 and 9 games, all 4 of
Sure.
them. From 7 and 9 and 9-7, maybe somebody gets lucky and bubbles up to 10 and 6. But I think that's probably the ceiling for any of these 4 teams. And also, I think the floor is pretty high. Detroit is better than they were last year. How much better? How much does that translate into the win column? I don't know, but It's tough to see any of these teams being worse than 5-11, and that's if bad things happen, like they did last year for Detroit, and then that goes across the division.
That's
So
right. Yep.
it's a very packed division. It's going to make those NFC North battles all that much more important and competitive.
All right, let's start with the defense. And Matt Patricia is not going to run the defense as far as the game day calls. It's going to be Corey Undland who was brought in, and he's going to take over and call the game. What do you think about that? What do you think about? And Patricia, of course, Pasqualoni, he allowed him to do that as well, but
Yeah,
that didn't work out.
that was more of a puppet, and
Was
so
it? Yeah.
yeah, Pasqualoni was Patricia's mentor back at Syracuse, and this was sort of him repaying the favor of giving him a shot. It didn't work. It was bad. That was pretty apparent. Undland is different. He comes from Philadelphia. He has worked under Jim Schwartz, the former Lions coach. Jim Schwartz and Matt Patricia are about as divergent philosophically as you can get on defense. Schwartz is a straight 4-3, wide 9 technique, 3 linebackers on the field, the Greg Williams school of defense, the Jim Johnson school of defense. Patricia is from the Belichick Parcells Crenell tree. And how that blends, we're all very anxious to see that, to be honest with you, in Detroit. They did play a lot more straight 4-man fronts in camp than they ever had under Patricia before. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. The personnel sort of suits them to be more of a 3-4 team. They're much deeper, though not necessarily as talented at linebacker as they are at defensive line. But how they do it, they brought in Danny Shelton, and that's the big key. He's going to be the face of the defensive front, the way that Damon Harrison was. And Harrison was fantastic in 2018. He fell off a cliff last year. They're hopeful that Shelton will be the guy who can pick back up and help him climb out of that abyss, because he's really good at what he does. He understands the defense that Patricia runs, that wants to run anyways. So with Unland coming in, we're hopeful that they're more aggressive. The 3-man pass rush last year did not work. Well, actually, it worked great against Kansas City and Mahomes, but then they stayed in it and teams figured out how to attack it, and the Pasqualoni-Patricia combination didn't adjust. That's part of why Undland is there. And I think the fresh set of outside eyes, it can't hurt.
Sure.
Will it help? I don't know, but it can't hurt.
Yeah, the team was 32nd against the pass last year, 14 interceptions the last 2 years. And when you're running a press type defense like Patricia wanted to run, maybe still wants to run, that ain't gonna do. I mean,
No.
that's not good. So
No.
But let's continue up front. So the team also drafted Penasini in the 6th round.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about this kid, Kevin Strong, whether or not, of course, he had some injury issues last year, went undrafted from UTSA. Is he going to get into the mix as far as a rotational player?
Yeah, he will. He shows a lot of energy, a lot of he's able to get up the field, which is something that not a lot of the other guys can do. And he's an odd size. He plays at 285, which is a very odd size for a defensive tackle end.
Sure.
But again, the multiple is a big word in Detroit. They don't necessarily like to use it themselves, but it winds up getting tossed around a lot. He can play a 5, he can play a 3, he can play a 7 if you need him to do. And that's something that they value. Romeo Okora on the other side is the same sort of guy. He's got a little bit more length to him, but they like those guys who can play anywhere across the front, from a 7 to a 5 to a 3. Even kick in a little bit more if they want to go real small. They haven't shown a propensity to do that, but that's something that it offers anyways. So yeah, he'll be in the rotation, but it's built around Shelton and Trey Flowers. Flowers really came on. He started a little slowly, and the statistical numbers weren't exactly there for him. But by about week 10, it was very clear he was the best player on the field. He really turned it up. He has stepped up this offseason. He's become more of a vocal leader and a more active presence amongst the teammates in the locker room. That's something that's been very well received. He has the potential to be a Pro Bowl player this year, and if the Lions defense is going to improve, he's going to need to be that, because
Sure.
he didn't have the level of consistent play last year that merits his $90 million contract. He did show it at times, though, and specifically at the end of the year, and the hope is that he can build on that and carry over He's another guy. He can play anywhere on the front, other than nose tackle, and expect to see a lot of movement around there. Expect to keep them, see guys like Penasini, who's a really, really good run stuffer on the inside. He's described himself as a fire hydrant on the inside, and I think that's
Okay.
exactly what they want, as sort of to shore up that run defense. Yeah, there are functional bodies in there. They brought in Nick Williams from the Bears. He probably is best known to Lions fans for sacking the crap out of David Blau late in the year last year, and making Graham Glasgow look really, really bad. He's sort of the pass rush oomph that'll come in. So they have different guys in different roles now. How they come together, it remains to be seen. But based on last year, with all the injuries that they had, and the underwhelming performances of the guys who were gone, again, I don't know if it's going to be better, but it can't be worse. It's
No,
probably
and
the
again,
easiest way to say that.
sure. And look, the team's got to stay healthy. There's just no question about
Yeah,
it. But there's also better players on the
yeah.
roster,
There are.
and
I'm very bullish on Trey Flowers. I think he's really going to break out. If he's not a Pro Bowler this year, it will be a disappointment, because the way he played the last half of last year, he absolutely belonged there. I know it's a logjam at defensive end, but he's so good, Greg. He just does everything that you
yep.
want. He just doesn't necessarily win with speed, which is what sells, and that's he doesn't get many highlight reels, but
Well, that's the thing. That's
man,
he's
he's
not
he's
going to
he's
be
so
a
good.
yeah. He's not. It's sort of like if you're a DB that if you're a corner that doesn't get more than 2 or 3 interceptions. Oh, I don't think he's a Pro Bowler. That's kind of
Yeah.
like Trey Flowers. If he doesn't get 12 or 13 sacks and he's playing on the edge, well, I'm not so sure he's a Pro Bowler. But we all know that Trey Flowers does more than just sack the quarterback. He's an all-around excellent defensive end.
Yes, he is. You just described Jonathan Joseph, one of my favorite players of all time.
Okay, there you go.
Cornerbacks who are really good in coverage but don't get interceptions.
Yeah.
He did
Uh,
that for a long, long time.
all right. Well, let's. If the team does, there's definitely going to be a lot of mixed in 3-4, 4-3, and so forth. Is are there going to be some players that are going to be playing stand up linebacker roles at certain times, like Austin Bryant, Romeo Aquara, guys like that?
Yeah, Aquara might. Austin Bryant appears destined for the PUP list once again. Unfortunately,
Ugh.
he just cannot stay healthy. They added Julian Aquara in the
Yes.
draft, and he is the stand-up outside linebacker. And you will see him standing up where he can touch his brother, which is really, really cool.
Okay.
He's more of a speed element. He is more of an upfield burst guy, where Romeo is sort of he's a grinder. And I don't mean that derisively either. He's the guy who wins with effort and technique. Julian wins a little bit more with speed, and can do some things outside the tackle box that Romeo can't. So you're going to see a lot of that together. You're going to see Christian Jones morph in. This team lost Devon Kennard, who was their leading sacker 2 years in a row, and he plays the quote unquote jack role. They're diminishing what that role is with Kennard gone. But if somebody's going to play it, it's going to be more Christian Jones as sort of a stand up. Maybe if there's a tight end, he will get on the line and
Okay.
maybe chuck him on his way to the quarterback. That type of role.
Got it.
We'll see how he does in that. He was either really good or really, really bad last year, depending on the week. There's again not a lot of consistency with a lot of the players on this team, and that's another issue. But yeah, you're going to see a lot of guys who float around, and Flowers can stand up. You don't want him turning and running with anybody, but he can get out there and have a guy blitz inside him, do loops, stunts, twists, things like that. He's very good at that, and hopefully a guy like Jones and the Okwara brothers can play into that too.
Now, we also talked about how it seemed when Jared Davis was switched to the outside and Tavai, the Hawaii kid who was in the second
Yeah,
round pick last year, took over in the middle, that seemed to work a lot better, especially for
it did.
Davis.
It did. Yes, Davis needs to be an attack dog. He needs to have one and only one assignment on every play. If you're asking him to think, he will think too much. And he's aware of that, by the way. He's come out and talked about trying to play a little bit better with blinders on. He's an exceptional blitzer in terms of timing his blitzes and also finishing them. He's really, really good at that. Tavai looked like a second round rookie in the middle, and I think you expect that. We expect growth out of him. They're going to play. They're both going to be on the field a lot. Christian Jones is also in there. How they use and how they move around, a lot of interchangeable parts. So it's not like the old thing. I think back to the Browns of my youth when Clay Matthews always played on the left side at outside
Yeah,
linebacker.
yeah, those days are over.
Yeah, Dick Ambrose was in the middle, and Robert Jackson was on the right side. That's gone.
Yeah.
These guys are going to play all over in all the spots. They're cross-trained to do it. One day in practice, you'll see them completely switch from the day that they were before. A lot of multiple looks, a lot of variability there. Their hope is that they're more creative in deploying that rather than just sort of being vanilla and just moving guys around but not really changing their roles. I think the ability to have Tavai, who's a little bit more of a downhill power player, Davis, who can cover in space and turn and run with people if he knows that's what he's supposed to do and only what he's supposed to do. They have those abilities. It's just a matter of putting the right guys in the right spots at the right times. And finding that, and that's again where Unlin comes in. How much does Patricia trust him to do those things in an off season where we don't have a preseason and the abbreviated training camp? It's going to be a work in progress. There are probably going to be some bumps in the road, but at the same time, there is definite talent at the linebacking level.
Yeah, and it really starts with the other former Patriot, Jamie
That's right.
Collins.
That's right.
And that to me is one of the big differences of when I look at this team and I feel confident, more confident in saying, yeah, playoff team. He's definitely a big part of that.
Oh, certainly. He is the big acquisition for the offseason. And again, his ability to play anywhere in the linebacking core. He can play the mic. You won't see that much, but he can go there. He can be your jack. He proved that he can do that very well. He was the #1 rated cover linebacker by PFF last year, and he got tested a lot. It's not a fluke. He has the athleticism. I remember when he was at Southern Mississippi, there was a picture of him going up to block a kick, and his knees were over top of the lineman's shoulders in front of him. He is still an amazing athlete. He doesn't get talked about it. When everybody was agog over Isaiah Simmons being this, transcendent athlete,
Sure.
I think back and he was actually behind Jamie Collins in a couple of athletic metrics. So Collins hasn't always played all that well. It hasn't always translated, but man, the fact that he reunited and chose, by the way, to come to Detroit and reunite with Matt Patricia, who he didn't necessarily get along with when they were together in New England, I think that says a lot about Collins. I think it says a lot about the perception of Patricia around the league. And I think it's a great, great boon for Detroit's defense because, man, the ability for him to do everything at a pretty high level is something that they just didn't have last year with Jared Davis there, with Devon Kennard.
Yeah.
Good players, but Collins jumps over them and maybe puts them on the right part in the depth chart. You have to have that playmaker linebacker. Collins can be that guy.
And they haven't had that in a while.
No,
it's been years.
Not since DeAndre Levy in his brief heyday.
Well, in the secondary, Darius Slay's gone, but Jeff Okudah was drafted high, so there's obviously big expectations there. You have Desmond Trufant, who is in at the left side, and tell me a little because you go through every team a lot of these teams I have to these training camp shows, and there's always a player or two that you don't really know too much about. Until you start, okay, that's an interesting player. So tell me a little bit about this. What is it? Oruwariye? Wait, how do you pronounce it? Oruwariye?
Amani Oruwariye.
Okay.
It's a mouthful.
Oruwariye.
Oruwariye.
That's the kid from Penn State, right?
Yes.
Yes, and he could start.
He probably will start, but again, starter and playing is it's a fungible term in Detroit. Sure. He will probably be the guy lined up opposite Trufant on the outside when they host the Bears in Week 1. Does that mean he'll play more snaps than Okudah? Maybe, maybe not. We don't really know yet.
At least he gets a chance.
Yeah, so there was one game last year where he stood out. He's a 4th-round rookie out of Penn State. He played really, really well in the Washington game, which was the worst game I've ever seen Darius Slay play. And the juxtaposition of that sort of elevated Oruwariye, and it got a lot of confidence in him. He did not play all that well beyond that. In fact, he got burned for a bad touchdown late that cost him a game. But there's a lot of potential with him. He's got length. He's got size. He's not afraid to use it. He's very good against the run. He's a great tackler. That's important for them
Oh yeah.
in their defense. He does not have turn and run speed all that great, and that's the big downside on him. But he will play, and he has a definite role as a. He is going to be an NFL starter for a long time. Not a high level one, but he's a guy that you can. If he's starting at cornerback for you, you know you're going to be okay. You know, you're not going to. He's not a guy that you're instantly going to be looking to replace all the time. And if he's your third cornerback, and that's going to be his role with Trufant being the number 2 and Okudah eventually stepping up to the number 1, that's pretty good. If you got those 3 guys on the outside, he had a very good camp. He seems to fit pretty well. They are playing a little bit more zone this year. He seems to be fitting a little bit better into that. But he's very good off the press too. Again, he's gonna struggle with the Deshaun Jacksons of the world, the guys who have instant speed.
Sure.
Will Fuller, when they play Houston on Thanksgiving, is going to be a problem if he's healthy. Those are the guys that are going to give him trouble. But every cornerback has a weakness. It's a matter of mitigating them. And I think with him there and with Okudah learning on the other side. Okudah, there's a lot of consternation that he's not going to be the quote-unquote starter right away as the number 3 overall draft pick, and I feel some of that myself, to be honest with you. But
why is that?
When you take a cornerback number 3, he'd better be good enough to play right
I
away.
agree. Yeah.
But the thing is, he will be playing a lot right away. It just might not be the nominal starter term. So I think.
Is there any particular reason why it looks like he's struggling a little bit?
Some of it is that he just hasn't had a lot of practice. He did miss a couple of days. He's just learning the new system. It is a different system from what they ran at Ohio State. They're asking him to do different things. Basically, the complexity of the interplay between the cornerback and the safety is very different from what he had at Ohio State, and that has been an issue for a lot of young. It bothered Oruwariye last year. Some of that was the fact that a couple of the safeties that they had last year were flat out terrible, and that's going to change too. But I think it's a matter of the team not wanting to throw him in. So we'll go back to Darius Slay for a second.
Yeah.
Slay, when he was a rookie, was a second-round pick. Very brash. He's always been Darius Slay. He's always been true to himself. He was awful as a rookie. He got benched, and he deserved it. And he will tell you that he deserved it too. He took it to heart. Not everybody does that, though. Not everybody can handle that. Not everybody has that mental strength, and I think they don't want to risk that with Okudah. And again, that's not saying that they're worried that he could be, but it's if they don't have to throw him to the wolves, they're not going to, and they feel like they don't have to because they're confident enough in Oruwariye that he can at least hold the fort until Okudah is really ready to thrive.
Yeah,
and I think they want him to be set up that way more than they want him to be set up to possibly fail. If that makes sense.
And look, and again, another thing I say an awful lot is that every rookie progresses in a different way. It's just because he doesn't have a good rookie year even doesn't mean he's not going to explode in year 2. It's not just the quarterbacks. The difference is the quarterbacks usually are thrust into the starting lineup because that's why they're there and they have to play.
That's right.
The same things would probably happen to kids like Okudah if they're not ready. If he was a quarterback, sorry, you gotta play. You're not ready, but you're playing anyway, and all the warts would be shown. And everybody would see and start to wonder. But then it's all about talent, and because he doesn't play quarterback, he doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and Okudah is very talented. I think we're going to see it. I expect him to play more than 50% of the snaps on the season. If you want to call that a starter, go for it.
Well, absolutely. And it sounds like a good future. Let's just put it that way.
Yes,
with both of those kids on the outside. And now Coleman's the slot corner.
Yep.
And you got Harmon and Walker. So who would be, I know the team likes to run a lot of 3 safety sets. So who would be the third safety? Would it be Curse? How's Will Harris? He was a 3rd-round pick last year.
So Will Harris was one of the aforementioned awful safeties last year.
Okay.
I'm just not a fan. He does
overdrafted.
He is not instinctive at all.
Okay.
I actually am hoping that they move him to cornerback because he's a very good athlete. He is a good tackler, although there are a couple of highlights of him not tackling well. But in general, he does that pretty well. He has no instincts in the pass game whatsoever. He will not move until he sees the ball thrown.
That ain't good.
It's rough. So he will be competing. Curse will come in. He's suspended for the first 3 games. After that, I do think he made enough of an impression in camp that he's going to play a lot. I do think you're going to see them run more 3 corners, not necessarily the big nickel as much.
Got it.
Again, Tracy Walker is great. He's going to be a star. We just saw Buda Baker get paid record money. Tracy Walker is a much better playmaker than him and has almost identical tackle numbers through their first 2 seasons. So it tells you where he's at.
That's
He's
huge.
really, really good. He's a breakout player. Harmon, I think, is going to be a rudder. He's replacing Tavon Wilson, who was generally pretty good, but had his faults in coverage a little bit. He wasn't necessarily the best guy to be over the top and single high. Was better at it than Harris was, but they run a lot of that single high, where you've got to cover both sides of the field. Harris certainly can't do it. The hope is that Harmon can do it a little bit more because Walker is better when he plays more closer to the line of scrimmage. He can play that sort of rover roll deep, but they like him better in closer to the line of scrimmage, getting up and being able to. Greg, he's one of the best I've ever seen at sniffing out a screenplay and getting out there in front of the block and blowing it up or redirecting the run back inside. He's so good at that after the first 2 seasons that they like him in that role. Playing him farther away from line of scrimmage sort of takes away from that. But it's a very good secondary. It's a pretty young secondary.
Like it.
They're built around it. Matt Patricia is a huge advocate of the cover sack. That's one of the reasons why they don't necessarily have your premier pass rushers up front, because he does believe that you can get cover sacks that way. At the same time, it would be nice if they had a little pressure to take some of the pressure off of guys like Walker and Oruwariye and Okuda from having to cover for 4 seconds on every snap. There's a balance to be found there. There are some people, and I have been in this camp, though I'm not currently there, I'm sort of waffling on that, who think that having a good secondary is actually a bad thing because it doesn't encourage Patricia to rush the passer as much. That's a big sports radio debate here in Michigan.
Wait. It's a bad thing to have a good secondary.
There are people who will tell you that him having all that good secondary and good coverage means that he's more comfortable not rushing the passer.
Not going to be aggressive. Okay.
Right. Exactly. I understand that argument, and I kind of understand it a little. I see it a little bit, but if you got guys that can cover, that it works for me, man.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, and we look at even the Patriots, his former team, the last few years, Patriots haven't had any star pass rushers. Right. They are the very. I mean, they have a star corner. They know how to cover. They've got a bunch of really good cover linebackers and DBs. And it's kind of the similar philosophy, but there's a big difference. Is Bill Belichick wins Super Bowls? Pat Patricia hasn't done that yet, so so he's going to get criticized.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the following the Patriot way, and that word is used very derisively here, is not something that a lot of people are all that keen on. They'd like to see him sort of stake out on his own. And again, that's why Undlin was brought in. We were really hopeful that we could see preseason games to see how much of an impact that would be. It's going to get more field tested when the games actually count, and that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing.
We'll see. It's interesting because when we were talking about him punting the lot inside the 40, that's the first thing I was thinking about was, maybe, when you learn from the master, right. A lot of times, Bill Belichick over his career, he's been aggressive at times. And he's been cautious at times. And it's very possible that Patricia caught a lot of the cautious moments of Bill Belichick where, hey, I've got the better team. I'm not risking anything at the 40-yard line and giving the opposition the ball there when I'm the better football team. Now, maybe Patricia kind of is in that, and he's a defensive coach. But sometimes you do have to learn how to, that's their team. This is our team. We have a different kind of way that we have to go about building this team. And until we are as good as that team, maybe we can't be so lackadaisical, and we have to be a little bit more aggressive, because in Bill's early career, he was very aggressive.
Yes, he was.
In his early career, yeah. When he was when he knew he didn't have the talent as much as the opposition, he was very aggressive. But then when they became the better team every week, he started to be a little bit more cautious, and maybe that's what Patricia learned. So.
It could very well be. We'll see how that plays out, but it's going to be different. It can't be worse. They were 32nd last year.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
How high up do they go is a big determining factor, and if this team is in last place again, or if they're making the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, if they're in last place, he ain't coming back. So we know
No,
that.
if they're not competitive by Thanksgiving, I would expect that to be his last game. Quite
Wow.
honestly.
Okay. Interesting. Well,
But again, competitive would be, you can't be 1-7.
no,
If you're 3-4,
he
I
won't
think
make
that's
it to
fine.
1-7. No.
No, I would hope not as
No.
a
Yeah. No.
Lions fan.
Yeah. So maybe they'd be happy with no fans. Okay. So we have less than 10 minutes. Let's talk about the offense.
Sure.
And look, again, it's all about Matthew Stafford. But we know what Matthew Stafford can do. So the running game, it's about keeping Kerryon Johnson healthy. It looks like a
Yeah.
nice stable. We talked about Huntley as the 5th-round draft pick. Johnson
Yeah.
last year in the 6th round. Scarborough had his breakout year in certain games after he was supposedly a bust just a year ago, a couple years ago.
Mhm.
But then they drafted Swift in the 2nd round, so it's a stable of really good backs, and this is what Darrell Bevel wants.
It is, and you're going to see a lot of those guys. Both Johnson's, Kerryon and Ty. Ty has stepped up. He will be the number 3 back. He's established himself with that
Okay.
in training camp. He's a really good receiver. He is the best pass protector on the team. That does matter to them. Swift looks like a really good fit, although unfortunately he's injured right at the moment. So how much that impacts how well he can get on the field and share those roles. They know that Kerryon Johnson cannot stay healthy for 16 games. That's why they drafted Swift. That's why they still have Ty Johnson. That's why Bo Scarborough is still around. That's why they drafted Huntley to be a little bit of a playmaker. And they're going to try to run the ball. I think that's something that they did it okay last year. It didn't translate into wins for them, obviously, but their yards per carry, their yards per carry on first down were the best that they'd been since the one year when Reggie Bush was good in Detroit. So the arrow is definitely pointing up with it, and they do have significant talent and diverse talent in the backfield, and that's something that hopefully Matthew Stafford can blend with, because Stafford was on fire last year. He was having an amazing season when he went down. It's a shame that it happened to him. If he can recapture that and they can run the ball better, look out.
Yeah, and that's been the issue. See, I kind of compare, like, Phillip Rivers has not he's had terrible offensive lines with the Chargers for so many years. So now he's with the Colts, and that's completely changed. Stafford hasn't really, yeah, his lines haven't been all that great, but especially the running game, he really hasn't had a lot of support in the run game. And that's why you just can't always blame Matthew Stafford when they're throwing he has to throw the ball all the time. And this was the first time last year we started to see glimpses of how good this offense can be if they could balance things out and take the pressure off Stafford.
Oh man, and the fact that he's more willing to take shots down the field with the receiving core that they've got, and again, play action is a big part of that. He's very good at the play action fake. That's something that Kerryon Johnson sells very well. So that it all blends together. The skill position talent on this team is really, really high end. It's a little precarious because there's not a lot of depth outside.
Nope, that's the problem.
Of the running backs for them. But yeah, if the starting skill position guys are all on the field all year, this should be one of the best offenses in the league. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. You Galladay, Jones, Amendola, and Hawkinson becomes the guy that they're expecting. That is,
and Hawkinson looks a lot better this camp. He's added a lot of muscle to his upper body and his core.
Okay.
He was a guy, he sort of got lost in the shuffle. He had no chemistry with Driscoll when he got thrust in. Then he got hurt. He looks really good. Again, there's a lot of Lions fans that are never going to get over the fact that they drafted him as high as they did.
Yep.
They need to put that in the past, though, because this is a very good young football player who's going to do a lot of good things this year. Will he be worthy of being a top 10 pick? Probably not, but that doesn't mean that he can't help the team.
Is he the number one, or is Jesse James?
Oh, he's definitely number one. Jesse James, I was hopeful that they would actually bring in a challenger for him. He was not good last year at all. He was brought in to be the inline guy. He didn't block well. He didn't pass protect well at all. He's not exactly dynamic in the passing game is probably the diplomatic way to say it.
and it's interesting because he had the breakout year the last year
he
was with Pittsburgh.
He did. He was the number one tight end that they coveted on the market, and it didn't work out. He's got a chance to redeem himself. He's going to play a lot.
Okay. Yeah, they're going to run a lot of two tight ends, right?
They will, and the third tight end right now is Isaac Nauta, who was a seventh-round pick last year, who is also being cross-trained at fullback. So there's probably really a role for the two of them. So you're going to see a lot of Jesse James for better or hopefully not for worse.
All right. And the important offensive line, Decker,
Yeah,
Ragnow, you bring in Vaitai from Philadelphia. Jackson was drafted. Stenberg was
yeah,
drafted. So how is it look? Is Decker and Ragnow to me and Vaitai, those are the three guys that, okay, we're comfortable there. So
yeah.
how are the other couple of spots looking?
Jackson is going to be the starting right guard, the rookie, the third-round rookie from Ohio
That's
State.
good then.
And
That's a
he
good
ran
sign.
away with that job. It was
Okay.
an open competition between him, Kenny Wiggins, Ode Ibushi. Stenberg was in that mix for a brief time. He ran away with it, and they're very pleased with what he offers, especially in the run game. And he and Vaitai are there on the right side to run the football. Make no mistake about that. They just gave Taylor Decker a massive extension. He earned it. He's a strange player to evaluate because for most of the game he's a really quality left tackle against both the run and the pass. But every game it seems like there's 2 or 3 plays where he just looks like he's never played football before, and mitigating those is a challenge. And you know he's also stepped up as leader on the team. He likes the hard nose. He loves going and getting after people at the second level in the run game. So the chance to be more physical with that is really good. Ragnow's one of the best young centers in the league. He's got Pro Bowl potential. Really, really good all-around player. He really thrived once he slid in there. But the guards, again, Jackson at the right side, Joe Dahl will be back at the left. They will rotate in. It will be Kenny Wiggins and Ode Ibushi rotating in with them. They liked it last year. They had a guard rotation all year. A lot of fans didn't care for it. I didn't care for it, although honestly, in rewatching the games, it sort of grew on me a little. I just wish that they weren't so obvious about when they were going to do it. I wish there was more method to their madness for doing it.
Yeah.
And they don't have depth beyond that. Tyrell Crosby is the third tackle. When he was thrust into action last year, he was not good, which was very disappointing to me personally because I really liked him coming out of Oregon, and it just hasn't worked out for him. Vaitai's pass protection at right tackle is going to be an issue because, again, they do not have great inline tight end blocking either. And you might see a lot of Tyrell Crosby as your sixth tackle. He did that a couple of years ago his rookie year. He played, I think, 50 snaps doing that. You can see some of that again, too.
The bottom line is next year the Lions need to find a left guard, unless Stenberg becomes that guy.
Yeah, and Stenberg right now is being trained as the backup center behind Ragnow, and that's just strictly for depth purposes because they didn't have anybody else on the team who could do it.
Okay.
So don't expect to see him as a rookie. But yeah, sure. That's the line. They're okay. They are not bad, contrary to what a lot of Lions fans will tell you. I'm not sure that they're great, but they have a very high floor, and I think that's been good enough. It was certainly good enough for Stafford last year.
Coombs, we have 2 minutes. Coombs brought in.
Yeah.
Great resume.
Oh, man, high energy.
Yeah,
high energy.
And they signed some really good special teams players in the offseason, so that has to be a drastically improved unit this year.
The hope is that they have to replace Sam Martin, who not only was a very good directional punter, he was also the kickoff guy. Matt Prater is great on kickoffs or on field goals and extra points. He's not good at kickoffs, which is very weird. They have a punting battle going on in camp. They still don't know who's going to win it between Jack Fox and former Aussie pro Aaron Sipos. That's a big deal. Don Muehlbach is back at long snapper. He's the vet. He's been there forever. I think this is his 16th season in Detroit. They're good. Tony McRae coming in, like you mentioned, a very good special teams play. Jamal Agnew, who's now moved to wide receiver and will be the number 5 wide receiver on offense. Looks like he's got still the juice. Very high variance returner. He's either really good or really bad, but his really good is as good as anybody.
Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for getting us ready for 2020 for the Detroit Lions, and I'm going to enjoy. Let's hope team stays healthy. It's a nice season. So when we talk to you during the season, there'll be good conversations, and we'll be talking about potentially a playoff run this year because that would be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun. It's a lot better than a coaching search at the end of the year.
No, we don't want to do that. At Jeff Risdon on Twitter. Jeff, I appreciate it as always. Thanks. Great job. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.